Hi, everyone. It's Sharon Devonish-Lee, your publicity strategist and host of NetStruck Talks. And today we have an exciting guest with us, the executive producer for Here and Now, Channel 7, Miss Tracey Washington Bagley. And she is going to talk to us about Here and Now, the show, as well as the amount of time that she's been in this industry, as well as giving us some nuggets in terms of, working in this industry and what we can do in this type of industry to excel ourselves. Stay tuned, and I'll see you in a few minutes. Welcome again. This is Sharon Devonish-Lee, the host for NetStruck Talks. And again, as I mentioned, I have a special guest with us today, Miss Tracey Washington Bagley. She is a very good friend of mine, but she is a whole just worth so much knowledge in the PR, media, communications industry. And I'm just so excited for her to be on the show today. Welcome, Tracey. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
So, as I had mentioned, you are the executive producer for Here and Now, Channel 7, which is a mainstream platform. The host is Sandra Bookman. Please talk to those who I'm going to say who's living under a rock, but talk to us in terms of about a little bit in terms of what Here and Now is about, and how did you get into this type of field?
Okay, so Here and Now actually evolved out of Like It Is, which was the longest running African American program, magazine show since 1968. Gil Noble, the iconic journalist, Gil Noble, was the host for many, many years. And, sadly, he got sick, he passed away. And Channel 7 continued its commitment to the African American community and said basically to us, we have to continue this tradition in journalism, but we can't use the same name because Gil was very smart in that he owned the name and he owned the programs after they aired. So he actually was acquiring an archive, which actually his family has to this day. Not sure where it's going to end up, but there's a wealth of information, shows. And so it was up to me to create something that could continue the tradition, but of course we could never replace Like It Is.
Right.
And so we came up with the title Here and Now, and I thought it would be a good idea to actually bring in a female host because I felt like the community might not be ready for a male host to step into those big shoes, Gil Noble's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Bookman and I had worked on Operation Save a Life, a special that airs on Channel 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I respected her a lot as a journalist. She's a weekend anchor, reporter, very smart. And I thought she'd be a good fit. So here we are with Here and Now, which is an hour-long magazine program that focuses on the issues and interests of African American and Hispanic community also. Basically, we could say community of color. Mm-hmm. And the beauty of a show like Here and Now is that it's not just, it's not just news coverage where you're getting a couple of sound bites. Mm-hmm. When you have a long form program like Here and Now, people really get to talk about their issue and give their perspective that you might not hear in a short news package, so to speak. So that's where we are here now. It's been great. It started in 2011, and we celebrated our 10th anniversary last year. And
congratulations!
Thank you. In a number one market.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a small group of us. We don't have this massive team. But we get it on somehow.
No, and I commend you on that because all of the episodes of what you have are all interesting. It's newsworthy, and as me as a publicist, I'm always looking for different platforms, and I'm just listening to different stories. And you guys really bring that information out in the African American and people of color communities, the things that people really did not know. So I love the fact that, yes, it is a small team that what you have, but you guys really get it in. And I
Mhm.
commend you on that. And congratulations on,
Thank
hitting your 10th year. I look
you.
forward to your 20th year,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
last year I saw what you guys did. And, I love the feature of what you guys did for, for your anniversary, for your celebration. So I can't wait until you get to your 20th year, because you guys will.
Thank you.
So let's talk about a little in terms of, I know what made you want to get into journalism. Was this your first thing that you thought of when you decided to, that you wanted to look for a career?
Well, it's interesting because I always liked to write as a kid. I always loved to, just sit down and write. And basically, I didn't realize it, but a young storyteller in a sense. I love to tell stories, share stories. But I really didn't realize that journalism was going to be my pathway. However, I was writing for the high school newspaper, Uniondale High School, shout out, Long Island. It was a
Okay.
black and gold, newspaper. And I still didn't get it though. When you're young, you don't always connect the dots the way you should. I had a best friend, Michelle Johnson. She knew. She was like, I want to be a journalist. And I started thinking, I'm like, that sounds like something I might want to do. Long story short, my mom, who was a New York City teacher for 30 years, there was no internet. So it wasn't like she could Google the best colleges for me to go to. She
Mm-hmm.
called the American Association of Journalists, and she was basically like, okay, tell me the top schools. And Syracuse came up, Ohio University. We jumped in a station wagon, went to Athens, Ohio, 14, 15 hours later. And my mother was asking all the right questions. She's like, will she get hands-on experience? Will she be job ready? And one thing that Ohio University offered was that as a freshman, I could walk in the door. This was aside from my classes, and I could be on a radio station, which was 50,000 watts. There was a nightly newscast. I was working behind the scenes, learning how to run the cameras, floor directing. I had a radio show, and it just kind of grew over a 4-year period. I started producing a talk show on the radio. I had a music show, et cetera, et cetera. So when I got my degree, I was job ready.
Wow.
And so that made the difference. Syracuse was great, but a lot of the well-known, or I guess you could say bigger schools, a lot of times students aren't able to get that experience until they're like in their junior year,
Absolutely.
right? And they steer them a lot of times towards, getting the ideal internship. I didn't really have to have an internship because my internship started when I, entered Ohio University. So that was key for me. But I had a really good mentor. Her name was Alma John. She was the first Black woman to have a radio show in New York City. She was a nurse and a friend of the family. She sat me down at the age of 18 and she said, if you want to get in this business, if they hire you to gather paper clips, that's what you do. Get your foot in the door, learn everything you can, and just go for it. So I had that mindset. So I really wasn't focused on being a producer. Matter of fact, I thought I would just, kind of go into radio because that's what I was doing. I'm like, oh, I'm the DJ, or, maybe a radio talk show. And News 12 started in Woodbury, Long Island. They were launching the first 24-hour news network. And they hired me as a sound tech. So I was out there, only woman, connected to a beta camera, mostly all white males. And, I had to keep up with them. They were jerking me around, I'm sure, to test and see if how tough it was. And technology started, making some changes to the way in which we would gather news. So there was no longer like a tape deck and a camera, right? They had a beta cam. And I remember my supervisor saying, all the sound techs are going to be running an ENG truck, which was this, news van with the long mask. And he's like, you don't want to do that, do you? And I said, yeah, sure. He's like, okay.
So listen, what your mentor said, it was like, listen, if they want to tell you to do this, you got to get your foot in the door.
Right. So I drive the news truck around and they'd send me to a live shot and I hook up the cables to the camera and the reporters were out there. And, as time passed, the same supervisor said to me, you want to come inside the newsroom? You want to do a little writing? And after about 4 years, I had gone from being a sound tech, production assistant, associate producer to producing a 4-hour live newscast.
Wow.
And, the man above had something even better in store for me. I interviewed at ABC in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never really been to Philadelphia. I mean, I maybe visited, but never thought about, working there.
Mm-hmm.
And they hired me as an associate producer, eventually. And I ended up producing a teen magazine show, Children First specials. It just kept, I was like, wow, this is just unbelievable. So I was there for almost 10 years. And then
Wow.
Channel 7 hired me.
New
So,
York City hired you then after.
yeah. And I remember
Wow.
my family, my mom said, you're coming home. I was like, okay. And so I took, there's no real pathway because I was at Channel 7 and I heard about a talk show in Houston. I went down there for a year. I left Channel 7. My boss, Art Moore, was like, why are you leaving? I said, because this is exciting. She's going to be the next Oprah. He's like, okay, you have my blessing. I go down to ABC in Houston. The show doesn't take off as a national show. Next thing I know, I'm getting an offer to produce ABC's Houston Medical, which was a reality series in a trauma center in Herman Memorial Hospital. And I spent 2 years producing that series. And that really tested my producing skills.
Right.
I was, I had to oversee a crew in a trauma center. Fast forward to when that wrapped up, I was called back to Channel 7 and I got to work with Gil Noble.
Wow.
And then Here and Now. So it's just weird, the pathway that I took. But, I kept my eye on the experience. It was never really about, the salary too. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to take this position because it's going to pay more. It was like, oh, this is another good experience.
It's an experience.
Right.
And I'm glad you brought that up because, when you look at journalists that's coming up now, or, anyone that's coming up in the public relations industry, communications, they're looking at, well, how much am I going to get paid? What am I going to do? Like they want to just jump right in and start doing stories. And when I get interns, I tell them, I said, listen, you got to take it slow. These are things that we have to do. First and foremost, you need to make phone calls to these desks and create a relationship. Just find out like, hey, I just want to just confirm to make sure that, this is the correct email that I can send a pitch to. And they don't want to do it. You sit there and you say to yourself, you got to start small because this is a type of industry that can suck you up and spit you out, and you will not have a career in it ever again. So you got to do this right, and you got to be humble about it. So just hearing your journey, you literally took that. And like you said, the man above, he blessed you because, you stayed in the ABC family for like in 3 states. In different industries. I mean, healthcare, Black talk show. I mean, you were really you're well versed in this type of industry. And, it's great to hear this because it gives people like myself and others a vision to say that, what, we can continue doing this because there is space for us.
Right. And also I tell, young aspiring journalists, you want to make your mistakes in smaller markets. You don't want to come to the number one market and make all your mistakes. So, a lot of the mistakes I made, and I'm always going to make a mistake because I'm human, right? And I always tell my interns, my associate producer, whoever, my editors, we all make mistakes. So it's not so much the mistake, it's how we correct it, how we go forward. But, in the beginning, you do make a lot of mistakes. So at least I was, at first in college making the mistakes, at a smaller station, cable, and you learn, right? So, and the other thing was I didn't make a lot of money in the beginning. I mean, back then it was like maybe $13,000 a year. And even though it's many years ago, it was still not a lot of money, but I would leave that job and go to another job. I'd go to a bank and I worked, in the afternoon to evening. I was getting up at 2, 3 in the morning to go to News 12. And then I'd finish that shift, sleep in my car for an hour, and then go to the bank. So
Right.
yeah.
No, and again, you made sacrifices.
Mhm.
And in this type of industry, there are sacrifices. And I'm pretty sure even though you made 13,000 a year, you left being fulfilled because that was something that you love to do.
Right,
I
right.
tell
And then,
people that
mhm,
if you don't love it, it's a job at that point. It's not a
right.
career, it's not a passion. And going into journalism, going into public relations, communications, this is something where you have to have a passion about it. You have
Oh,
to be a people's person. If not, you sink at this. You'll
mhm.
suck at it.
You have to love this. I always say you can't like it. You can't kind of like it. You have to really love it,
Mhm.
because it will challenge you. People will challenge your skills. As an African American woman, I knew that, we hate to say it, but you always have to be three times better.
Absolutely.
Especially, yeah, even now. But when I first started, it was a white male dominated field. Most of the people behind the camera, producers, writers, were white males. So here I am, this young 20-something-year-old, what are you doing here? Back in the day, they would
Questioning.
say things like, who wrote this piece of crap? In the newsroom, and shout it out. There was no such thing as, harassment or whatever. And you just had to roll with the punches.
Right. And you talk about, because you've been in the industry for so long,
Mhm.
talk about the transition from when you initially started in terms of technology. So one of my mentors, she's been a publicist for 30 plus years.
Mhm.
And when I interviewed her, she said, Sharon, we didn't even have, email. It was literally fax, and we had to walk over to that platform, that newsroom, and have coffee with a reporter or a journalist, and create that relationship. I mean, talk to us in terms of, when you started from there, going through, and also now going through the pandemic, because, it was we were in studio, and
Right.
now you are at this.
Right, 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 exactly. So I actually, when I look back at how I used to book a show, it was like going through almost like the yellow pages, looking for looking for nonprofits and who looked like, oh, maybe I should make this call. And we had Rolodexes with, once we started, seeking out, people, and figured out who was who the players were. You had your little Rolodex you went through, which are cards for the millennials that don't
I know,
understand.
who don't know.
And you'd be like, oh, that person at the Red Cross, let's call them, pull a name out, right?
Mhm.
And the other thing is that we shot everything on tape. So you're talking about footage that you would take out of a camera, give it to the editor, they put in their machine and they edit. But then if there was an issue with it, they'd have to start all over because there was no digital editing, right? So that was something that would slow you down. Fast
Mhm.
forward to now, everything is digital.
Right.
We take out a P2 card and it goes in the camera, it comes out. If I need an editor to put in add music or change a shot, it's not a big deal. It's like, oh, okay, wait, let me move that track around. So
Mhm.
that's why I say to the generation behind us, it's like you guys have it easy. And not that it's an easy industry, but your resources are
Your
easier
resources.
to tap
Yeah.
into. You
Yeah.
have Google. You're like, I'll say to the interns, let's do a story on Black businesses in New York City. All you got to do is Google, Black businesses, New York City, and the whole list comes up. Now all you got
Right.
to do is pick up the phone and call. And
Right.
and I do recommend, even though we're in email era, you could send an email and introduce yourself, but get on the phone and call, because we're still
Absolutely.
people. We're still human
Yes.
beings. We're not computers.
Yes.
Build those relationships so you can go back to that person and say, hey, Lisa, how are you? It's Tracey. Just want to see how it's going. What are you guys up to? It shouldn't just be an email or a text.
Right, right. And that's how we actually connected. I mean,
Mhm.
I sent a pitch to you, you emailed me back, and
Right.
I tell people, when you send a pitch, if there's a telephone number, call
Call.
and see. And
Call.
if they received it, and don't only just call when you send a pitch, send a
Right.
text message.
Right.
I send you text messages for happy holidays or whatever.
Yep.
But you have
Yep.
to, like, just like what you said, you're human.
Right.
So
Right.
it's not
Right.
something where it's a machine that you got to go and go and go. I
Right.
tell I tell people, I joke around. I was like, listen, it's great that you know the reporter or the
Hmm.
host. I
Hmm.
said, you need to know the executive producer because that's the one who calls the shots.
Right. A lot of people don't know that because they'll say, and I like being behind the scenes. And I really, I don't know if I gave much thought to being in front of the camera. I did like radio because I didn't have to worry about, oh, is my hair right or whatever. But then once I got into television, maybe for a half second, I said, oh, it'd be cool to be a reporter or whatever. But I realized that the creative control is behind the scenes. That's where you get to make decisions, come up with ideas. I could be just driving on the turnpike or wherever, and all of a sudden I say, oh, you know what? We haven't done a story on this. And oh, that's a great idea. And so then all of a sudden, it materializes. I
Mm,
find whoever it is. I could produce a special in my head, say, oh, let's take on a topic, Black Lives Matter. Okay, who's going to be on? Who are we going to talk to? What happened? Where? How am I going to lay that out? It's almost like an art. I say it's like a
right.
rhythm. And all of that you get to do. The hosts, for the most part, they may copy edit your scripts or whatever, but you're the one that stacks the show, where the
Mhm.
stories go. A lot of times, the interviews that are done in the field, the producer is the one that sits there in that seat, does that interview, and then the host will track their voice. And so, like I said, early on as a kid, I knew I liked to write, but my family used to tease me because also as a child, I asked 100 questions. And my mother said, oh my God, if you ask one more, nope, go ahead, ask your question. But I would always ask a lot of questions. And so it was actually something in my DNA, I would say. Um,
Mhm.
I'm just very inquisitive. I love people and I like to share their stories. It's
Right.
like, I met this fascinating person. Gotta hear this story. And that's really what good television is about. It's
Right.
storytelling.
The
Even if it's the
storytelling.
news, it's a story. It's about somebody's life, something that's going on that we need to know about, and perhaps there's a solution. With
Mhm.
long form television like Here and Now, what I like is that, yeah, there may be issues in the community, but there are a lot of people that are making changes and are doing things to make a difference. Let's hear what their lives are about and the project they're working on, who they're helping. So
Right.
it gives us more room to really get to know what's going on in our community versus there was a shooting. Okay.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
backstory of that, right?
And I'm glad you brought that up also because when you think about the African American community of color, all you think about what's really being portrayed is a lot of the negativity, the
Hmm.
shooting, the lack of businesses, the lack of resources. But in all actuality, what you do is you're showing the riches in the Black communities. You're showing some of the resources that we do get, or you're bringing in awareness to say, hey, you know what? Th- you know this particular industry, this community needs these resources. And why do we need these resources? To help out X, Y, and Z. So you bring in a great awareness to the platforms, to the people that needs to know that actually can make things happen. So again, I congratulate you guys. You
Thank
guys
you.
are doing
Thank
a
you.
fabulous, fabulous job.
Thank you.
Before we go, I
Mhm.
want to ask you one thing. What would Tracey tell her younger self
Mhm.
what she knows now? What would you tell your younger self back then?
That my hard work was going to pay off, and to keep learning everything that I could learn, to not second guess myself so much, and to make sure I keep in touch with people along the way and strengthen those professional relationships, because those are some of the people that you may have to go back to, and that can help you. But I would also say that I think that I should not have doubted myself as much, because I second guessed myself a lot when I was
Mm,
younger. And I'm like, am I good enough? Am I a good enough writer? Am I, just second guessing myself?
mhm.
Um, but once I let that go, it was like, this is my style. This is who I am. These are the people that I want to, bring into the fold when it comes to segments, even though, I would get pushed back. Oh, that's not such an interesting story. I don't think anybody's going to watch that. No, go for it. Just go for it.
Just go for it. And I end that with, although that is what you would tell your younger self, that's also what we would tell the younger generation now that's coming up behind us, that don't second guess yourself. Like, this is an industry where you really can get lost,
Mhm.
and sometimes it's a thankless job. It's a thankless career.
Yep.
And and it will mess with your mind. It'll mess with your mindset, but just keep
Mhm.
going forward. Do what you're doing, because look, Tracey is a successful executive producer. She's been with a major network for years, and she's still rising, because I know she has some secrets coming up. I'm not going to bring them up. We're going to bring you back to talk about that later. But thank you again, Tracey, for taking the time to be on NetStruck Talks. And we're definitely going to have another conversation about how is it that we're going to evolve and grow, and how we can actually help here and now and help you grow even more, because again, we're standing on your shoulders. We are looking at you to help you grow, as well as help the African American community. So thank you.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. We can't, my team, none of us can do it without our viewers and people like yourself, Sharon, publicists that are making it happen.
Thank you again. And do you want to say when Here and Now airs, for those, like I said, that's under a rock, and
Oh my God. Here and Now airs on Channel 7 WABC every Sunday at 12 o'clock. But on the ABC7NY app, you can watch Here and Now around the world. All our episodes you pull up from any of your smart devices, and you can watch Here and Now. All the wonderful shows that we've put together for you.
Absolutely. And thank you again, Tracey.
Mhm.
Everyone, will see you at the next NetStruck Talks. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.